Joanne Hillhouse, and for this creative space, I'm going to be stepping way out of my comfort zone, but I do think it ties back to things like community and culture, which is what my column Creative Space is about. I'm here today with Donald Charles, who is Managing Director of WOCAP Fund, which provides working capital and financing for micro, small, and medium enterprises. They're headquartered in Jamaica. But I want to talk to Don. I hope it's okay to call you Don. More casual, not casually, more specifically about the presentation that he did in October at the Antigua and Barbuda conference. The presentation focused on inflation and the impact of inflation in Antigua and Barbuda. And just generally, can you set the framework for what is inflation and why should it matter to us?
Inflation is really the rate of increase in prices over a given time. Mm-hmm. And so even though people may not think about it in this technical way, everybody feels the impact of inflation. Just by going into the supermarket and say, wait a minute,
we're feeling it. We're feeling it.
But, absolutely. But so that's basically what inflation is. And so inflation has an impact on everybody. In every sphere of life, in every type of business, inflation has an impact.
So it's not just like the price went up from, I don't know, on your tuna from last week to this week. It's about the measure over time, yes?
Yeah, so technically you compare it against what it was in the past. And so by doing that, you see, well, okay, the price went up by this amount, but there's an impact if the price goes up. And the price will impact individuals differently, depend upon your disposable income, or what you earn, your spending habits. That increase in price has an effect.
Yeah, so for example, here you have the increase in gasoline prices over between 2016 to present. If you were to say, what does this mean to the regular person in terms of not just, okay, I don't have a car, whatever, how does this affect me down the line?
Well, quite interestingly, the gasoline prices, as you show it, does not affect somebody who does not have a car to the same extent as it would somebody who has a car. Okay, but as you can note, since 2016, the price of gasoline has been relatively high. It has gone up, and that's really impacted by the cost of oil on the world market. And so there's an interrelationship between what happens on the world market or the global market and what happens in terms of on a local level.
Okay,
so,
go ahead.
All right, so in the case of the price of gasoline, as you just showed it, for somebody who's not driving, that's taking the bus, okay, that impact of the increase in the gasoline or diesel price for that matter does not have the same impact as somebody who is driving.
And there's secondary impacts related to things like gasoline for non-car owners. I can't think of anything in particular, but in your research, is it just people who drive who are affected?
Okay, so let's look at it in the direct impact and the indirect impact. In terms of the direct impact on non-drivers, the transportation costs from all around the bus fares have been in effect since 2005, and they have not changed since 2005. Okay. However, what has happened is that the bus operators who would be impacted by the increase in gasoline and diesel prices have been provided with a subsidy by the government, where they are provided with 10 vouchers per week for 35% off the fuel purchases at the pump. So then what the government has done is to cushion the effect of the increase in gasoline and diesel prices by giving a subsidy that reduces the cost of fuel for the bus operators at the pump. Therefore, it has not caused the increase to take place in the bus fares for those persons who don't drive.
But it affects the public treasury, is what you're saying.
Oh yes, the government, yes, because they are subsidizing it. So it means that the public treasury would get 35% less on the taxes it would have gotten from what they add on to the price of fuel.
And the factors there in terms of inflation related to gas, things like with the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, all these things be factors, or something else?
Oh, absolutely. The recent increase in global inflation is caused by the war, which had impacted food prices, like wheat and other stuff like that, and also the impact on oil. Oil prices have gone up, and every time there's inflation, every major peak of inflation over the last 30, 40 years has been directly impacted by the increase in oil prices.
Okay, because the war is fairly recent, I mean, this year, like, are there other factors building up to it that led to the jump in everything?
Well,
the pandemic, for instance, was that a factor?
The pandemic, for some items, because if there was scarcity due to the production being disrupted as a result of the pandemic, then there's scarcity. And once you have scarcity, there's going to be an increase in prices. So for some items, they did increase as a result of the pandemic.
Okay, so I want to talk primarily about food, but before we go to that, I've seen some reporting that suggests that some of this is predatory and not natural. Some of the inflation is predatory and not natural, and that some of it is sort of people, I mean, capitalism, the dark side of capitalism, people jumping on, okay, everything is going up, we're gonna mark up all things higher. And I've seen that in fairly reputable publications. Can you give some context to this? Is there any truth to it from your point of view? And the tail end of that question is, if there's inflation, might be a stupid question, but if there's inflation, things go up, but never seem to come back down. So we never have the flip side of that, when things level out, when wars go away, when pipeline issues are addressed, that there's then deflation, or is always trends in the upward direction? Okay.
I just want to finish up a point on you asked about if the gasoline prices for those who are not driving. And yes, because from a production or operation business perspective, if their costs go up, i.e., if you're a distribution company and you're driving around to distribute product and the gasoline prices or the fuel prices go up, it means your operating costs are going to go up, and 9 out of 10 times you're going to increase your cost of whatever the goods or services you provide. And so the people will feel that in the inflationary impact or an increase in prices, even if you don't drive.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see that. So your moving product, the cost of moving product increases, the cost of the product increases.
Yes.
Is any of that predatory? That's the other part of what I was asking.
Right. So let's go to the predatory aspects of it. Now, and quite interestingly, if you look at in Antigua, we have a food basket, and there are a number of food items that are included in the food basket that are controlled. Okay, the markup is controlled. Quite interestingly is that even though the markup is controlled in these basket of goods that the government determined need to be controlled because they're products that are consumed by the majority of the people or the low income persons, that markup that's being controlled, whether it is 15% wholesale and 15% retail, it's only on the price. It's only on the price of the item. So for example, if I'm bringing in Kraft macaroni and cheese, importing Kraft macaroni and cheese, while I might only be able to mark it up 15% as a wholesaler, there's no control over that price, the base price of which I'm going to mark it up. Okay, so the importer is going to say, I'm buying Kraft from the US. The US company has increased its price because of the inflationary impact on the product, the inputs, The shipping company may have increased the price as well because the fuel has gone up and the shipping costs have gone up. So that item, the last time it was brought in, the base price is going to increase as a result of shipping, handling, what have you. And so even though the control markup is 15%, it's still going to impact the general public. Now, the question you asked about predatory is one that could happen, in that if you're running your business and there's certain areas you can't mark up too much because of competition and because of maybe some degree of price control, then you're going to take it out. You may take it out on other products that you said, okay, let me mark up this one much more because inflation is going up, prices are going up. So yes, there are occasions where predatory pricing can take place because businesses are looking to make money. Now, in a free, supposedly a free enterprise market, if you take your prices up much higher than your competition, then people are going to go somewhere else to purchase it. So there can be a limit to how much you can increase your prices, whether predatory or not. Because somebody's strategy might be, even though the price of the goods may have gone up more, I may reduce my markup in order to stay competitive and to keep the volume of sales going. Okay. So there's market forces that balance it out. But yes, predatory pricing can take place in an inflationary environment.
Okay, so based on what you're saying about the market forces making things more competitive, I guess that would address my other question about is there ever deflation? Is there ever, but that might not be the economic term for it, but does what go up ever come back down? It was the larger question there.
In some instances it does. Let's just say in the US, you'll see the price of fuel go up because of the global fuel prices go up, but then you see it comes back down. If you notice, from 2014 or 16, the price was pretty stable for 3 or 4 years, but the price went up and down over that period, right?
So we have a situation where there's more stability in terms of market forces?
Well, I think its stability is controlled, so we may not have the benefit of the decreases in oil prices. So, for example, Antigua determined that they're not going to take off, they're not going to make the adjustments when the price of fuel comes down, because they want, as a revenue source, they want to keep the revenue to come. Maybe some of it is compensating for the subsidy given to the bus or for the treasury operation of the country. So they determine they're not going to bring it down. In other countries, it goes up and down depending upon that base price of the oil. Now,
yeah, what you said explains the disconnect that I feel when I watch international news, and what's happening does not seem to correlate to what's happening locally. It's like I'm living on a different planet when I see some of these things.
Yes.
So that explains it, I think.
So, and then the scenario now is that generally, for the average items, when they go up, they just hardly ever come back down.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And so that is where the issue is. Now, some items may come back down, or you may have cases where there's discounts. So you may have discounts being offered, which is an incentive to drive sales. And those discounts would tend to bring down the prices of some items. But the base price will stay up. Very, very rarely do you see those prices come down.
Don, I want to talk about food, because you know, all this stuff that we're saying, I feel sometimes people might tune out, but everyone has to eat. No matter if you're eating rich or you're eating poor, we can't exist without food and water and air. So can we eat in the current situation? I'm showing you, if you can see my screen, this is from an earlier creative space. We were talking about food as culture. And I'm sure you recognize the plate there. There's a Facebook group called Rate My Plate that I took this from. And these are Antiguans sharing their plates when they cook. because they're proud of their cooking. And this is what we might call a sort of, we see the sweet potato, we see the dumpling, we see the plantain, we see the saltfish, the chop up, and the anchovy, the avocado. Can we compare this meal, if you can, to a year or 5 years ago to now? Can we afford to eat in Antigua and Barbuda? Because the price of saltfish actually seems like a luxury item right now when I go to the supermarket. So kind of, you know, riff on this plate for me and how well we can eat now in the current circumstances, if you can.
Okay, well, first of all, I will only do that if you're going to send me a plate for lunch today. Other than that, I'm going to pass on the question. Okay, actually, this is quite interesting, and inflation does have an impact on what persons eat, and by extension, what persons eat is going to have an impact on their health, and in addition to that, is going to have impact on the whole entire support system, because if they don't eat well, in fact, I think I read something last week. I heard that the Caribbean have the highest rate of diabetes. It's increased like threefold or something like that, right?
Well, I don't know the figures, but I know that medical benefits, for instance, has been trying to aggressively push lifestyle shifts to moving more, eating a more balanced diet and all that, because we do have a high strain of lifestyle diseases, hypertension, diabetes, and so on. But the irony is that the more expensive this plate gets, and I'm not saying that everything on the plate is good for you all the time, but the more expensive it gets to eat the things that they say you should eat, the chances are you'll be eating the things that you shouldn't. And one of the things I noticed from the price control list that I had up earlier is that it might not all necessarily be things that are good for you, and it's a lot of brand stuff as opposed to, okay, you need more fruits and vegetables and so on. I'm seeing, like, I never realized that it included like Oka Craft that specifically, or this brand specifically. I thought it was just these are the optimum things that you should be eating, and these are the things that we're going to protect. But it seems to work differently.
Yeah, because I mean, it's reflective on what the society is eating. And the society is eating what they can afford. And what they afford is a lot of what they can afford is a lot of processed items. And so in order to control or to positively impact the cost of what persons need to spend, they have put price controls on these items that people eat. But as you quite correctly pointed out, it doesn't necessarily mean that the items that I have in the basket are healthy for the individuals to eat. And so there is a spin-off effect of which by eating those items that are not healthy, it has an impact on their health, and then it has an impact on the society and on the government by the terms of the increase in medical costs, medical treatments and stuff. So everything is interrelated. Now, the question then comes in, when you look, interestingly though, if you look at this control for most of the items, the increase in prices over the years have not been significant. Let's just take Libby's peas and carrots, okay? It was $4.21 in probably that's 2016 or 2017. And so what happens now? I mean, 5 years after, it only went up by 55 cents.
And that's due to the price control.
And that's due to the price control. But that price control is only impacting the markup. It is controlled because Libby's, as a company in the US, has kept their wholesale distribution prices consistent.
Okay, I'm going to look at the juices. I'm going to look at the juices for a second. I was talking to a diabetic the other day, and he was complaining about the difficulty getting juices, natural juices. Now, you might say, well, why doesn't he go and pick something and squeeze it? But you can get juices that have no added sugar or from concentrate or whatever, as opposed to juice drink, which has in a lot of the sucrose and the fructose and all of that. And it doesn't seem like, here's a disconnect I'm seeing, and maybe you can tell me as a national plan, is that possible? But if we're talking about lifestyle diseases, then why are we bringing in sodas, or why are we protecting the price of sodas as opposed to the no sugar added from concentrate juices and water and things like that?
Because it's being impacted by what people earn and what they can afford. If you look at it, when I was doing that paper, I was talking to somebody that works they work in the government, and I ended up running into them at a Chinese supermarket that got set up where Luke's Hardware was.
Okay.
And he had his lunch plate. I don't know if it had in Dukkana or saltfish or whatever, or maybe it had in Chinese food because it was plenty for a reasonable amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, he went in to buy something to drink, right? And he ended up he picked up one soda, it was a little larger, and he ended up picking a smaller soda because of the price to go with his lunch, okay? That soda might have cost $2, $2.50, something like that, as opposed to if he had wanted to buy a juice from a concentrate, might have cost him $6 or $7. And so when he's looking at his budget for his lunch, it was outside of his budget. So he wanted more food, so he may have bought a bigger plate of food at a cheaper price and then just take whatever drink that he could get in order to go along with it. So that's what's happening, is that there's also, just beside the food, I've known of cases where persons have wanted a pair of shoes, right? And instead of buying a better pair of shoes for $150 that could last them for a year and a half, they end up buying a pair of Chinese slippers or shoes for $30 or $40. It lasts for 3 months or 4 months. And then when it mash up, they'll buy it again in 4 months' time. But they have the $40.
Yeah.
But they don't have the $150 to buy the better pair of shoes.
Yeah.
So really, the poor people who are more impacted suffer the most.
Because they end up spending more for the item, because the need doesn't go away. But
the need doesn't go away.
Yeah.
But it's what they can afford. So in the food, that's what happens. So yes, they may, if let's say that plate of Dukkana, pear, chop up,
let's look at it again.
Saltfish in that plate, right? Okay, what would that cost for somebody to prepare against some Kraft's pasta, some Libby's peas and carrots, and some jumbo fries?
So what can people do to weather this storm?
Well, it's a very serious dilemma. And you can imagine that dilemma on persons who are at the lower income levels that are living on a very, very tight budget. They don't really have any options. All they're going to end up doing is cutting back on some of the things that they may eat. They're going to start cutting back on things that they do because they have to fit it in within what they have available.
Buy more of the things that's not good for them to stretch it.
Buy more. I was driving down up All Saints Road on Saturday night. So just past Piper's gas station, Piper's Pharmacy, going up the road there, before you reach the credit union. I'm driving by and I see all these people in this restaurant, right?
The Chinese restaurant?
Well, I wasn't sure. So because I know I was going to talk to you, I want to be sure. I went back around and drove back around. And when I looked, I came out my vehicle and it's a Chinese restaurant, right? And so you can imagine that people are going to the Chinese restaurant because they're giving more for less. The quality may be suspect. And in fact, what was quite interesting with this Chinese restaurant is no longer Chinese. It wasn't a Chinese restaurant. It was also a Chinese store. They had all kinds of products behind there selling now. And the price of those are going to be cheaper because they're bringing them in. And in fact, somebody was telling me from a government office that there's no control over the quality of what's coming in. So there was somebody who bought a drop card, a Chinese drop card from one of the stores, and it was so light it couldn't take the load factor and it melted. Now, it could have caught the house on fire if you're in a low-income wooden house, right? Or they're bringing in products and because it's the Chinese, some of them don't even have the requisite translation on, but the price is less. So
okay, so that sounds like a whole bunch of dropped balls and bigger than we can cover in this.
It's a serious matter.
It sounds like a whole bunch of drop balls in terms of regulation and legislation and and also why it is that some are able to bring in stuff cheaper in the first place. If you're saying it's all market forces, so
it depends.
We don't have the space to deal with all of that. What can people do?
No. So as it is now, the most people can do is one, look for where they can get the best deals. And so some companies are going to want the volume, the business volume in sales, and may keep their prices slightly down or offer discounts, which will benefit the consuming public. One, they're going to have to try to adjust their budgets and their priority spending so that at least they can prioritize what they want to do and what they want to eat and give up something else, right?
That some people don't have any space to give up anything, but I hear you.
But yes, but some people do, you know.
Yeah, some people do.
And so the issue is that we have remember in Antigua, we have developed a lifestyle living like we in North America. So we may have to begin to adjust to recognize that the times have changed now and we need to adjust in order to be able to survive. And as I say, it's going to affect the low income people more. Again, you talk about dropping the ball, but when you look at pears or the potatoes to make the dukana or what have you, is that readily available, and is the price reasonable that persons can then say, you know what, I'm going to be switching from this item to that item because the prices are more competitive, and I also can eat better and improve my health.
I want to thank you, Don, for taking the time to talk with me today. When I saw that, I think the presentation was very timely and very important, and I wish we could cover everything in it. But the thing that jumped out at me was the real impact on the streets when you brought it down to that, because often economists don't bring it down to that. They kind of talk up here when people are living here and here.
I'll tell you, I ran into some youth by that building on Redcliffe Street. And they were just where they have Western Union and the Chinese.
Oh, Benji's building.
Benji's building. And some guys were there. They were like 30 and younger. And they were chatting. And I stood up and I started to listen. I said, can I listen? They say, yeah. I said, so what's the impact of inflation? The guy says, well, the size of everything is coming down. The bread is coming down in size, right? The weed is coming down in size. And the quality is getting worse, right? And so they say, and then he's saying, as a young person, that they're not earning any more money. Their wages are the same. So here it is, he had a plan to get into business, to do this and that, and he can't do it because the wages that he had, that he was going to save something for his investments, because of the inflationary impact, he doesn't have anything to save. So therefore, he can advance his goals and his dreams.
Okay, so one last thing. Try to answer this in under a minute because I don't want us to clock out. Where's the light at the end of the tunnel in all of this?
In my opinion, there really needs to be a real structured approach from the governmental level. There needs to be a real development of our communities in terms of community organizations, parish councils. And from that level, we need to then say, okay, like those foods, are we going to plant more foods within natural local foods within our communities and selling them in community markets so that the people in the community can buy them at reasonable prices that can improve their health? You know, that's the level that we need to, and then like what you're doing is very important in terms of being able to have the discussion with those persons who need to understand what the challenges are and what they need to do, because nobody's talking to them. They're just out there on their own, and you know, they just going to buy what they have to buy to think, but they're not beginning to look at, okay, this is how this thing works. Here's how we're going to have to adjust, and here's how we're going to have to move towards surviving as best as we can while we wait for, you know, things to improve.
And things will improve when?
It'll be a while.
Oh my God, you couldn't have sent me out on a high note. I get it. You have to be real. You have to be real. I appreciate the realness.
It's not. I mean, we're gonna have, I mean, when you look at it, even from Antigua, from a tourism perspective, right? Okay, so we're gonna have, remember, yes, we have inflation now, which has gone up very significantly the last year, right? But remember, people are coming out of COVID, where they were out, there was revenue issue, they were out of work, right?
Yeah.
Now, a lot of the social impact is greatly impacted by all of this. You know,
Yeah.
Parents don't have enough money. They can't give the non-working kids. The non-working kids now begin to maybe steal and commit crimes. You know, the social impact is a problem because everybody's on edge. They don't have enough money to buy food to feed their family. So they
bringing it full circle, stress also impacts those lifestyle diseases that we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely.
So
it's a serious matter.
It's a hard road. It's a hard road ahead. I don't feel any better after talking to you, but I do appreciate you breaking it down for me. Thanks for your time, Don. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
All right.